Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to day 5 of Founders Week YQG. I know you all just heard from George Kalivas, the producer of the Pizza City You've Never Heard of documentary. So we're excited to have him. And thank you all for joining us on these 5 days. We're excited to bring together the WindsorEssex ecosystem. Yes, Susan, we at the WEtech office are also craving pizza, so maybe for lunch. And I just wanted to quickly mention that while this event is virtual, we would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We are grateful to work, learn, and live in this area. And finally, this week would not have been made possible without our generous sponsors. So I would like to thank the province of Ontario, the St. Clair College Alumni Association, the Job Shop, Libro Credit Union, Workforce WindsorEssex, Baker Tilly Windsor LLP, Alpha Core Group, Venturit, EPICentre, Small Business Center, Genesis Entrepreneurship Center, and WEtech Alliance. Thank you for putting #founders first. Today's session is hosted by WEtech Alliance. WEtech Alliance is one of 17 regional innovation centers funded by the province of Ontario, serving the Windsor-Essex and Chatham-Kent regions. We provide entrepreneurs with business services, training, mentorship, and strategic connections. To learn more about what we do, please check us out at wetech-alliance.com. Now on to a couple housekeeping items. Today we are leveraging Zoom webinar, so you might not be able to see all the attendees. However, you will be able to interact with our guest here using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And should you experience any technical difficulties, please send me a message in the chat box. Just a reminder that this session will be recorded and it is being live streamed to Facebook just in case your Zoom feed cuts out. And this session will be made available for you next week. And on the final day of Founders Week YQG, let's let everyone know, let the whole Windsor community know that this is where it's at. So please make sure you tag your Founders Week YQG experience with #Founders Week YQG and share the wonderful gifts that were created for us by Red Pistons. Just look up WEtech Alliance on your custom GIF bar. Now I would like to welcome on stage our guest here, Jennifer Charron. Jennifer Charron possesses over 10 years of experience in human resources and recruitment. The majority of her experience has been cultivated in the professional search areas and corporate recruiting. Jennifer brings a wealth of experience in recruitment of management, technical, engineering, finance and accounting, customer service, human resource, vertical markets. Jennifer has developed clients within the automotive, non-for-profit, manufacturing, financial services, retail, healthcare, and technology industries. Jennifer is very involved in our Windsor-Essex community through the Windsor-Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of Founders Week YQG team, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen here for just a moment. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. So thank you so much for such a warm introduction. I'm so happy to be here. As mentioned, I have a background in recruitment and I'm also a small business owner. So really what I'm hoping today that you'll get away from today's session is some best practices and tips as you're starting to grow your team and hiring your first employee, and ultimately some things that you can put in place as you start to build your team. So I thought I would start out by sharing a little bit more about myself and the organization. So as mentioned, my name is Jennifer Charron. I'm the owner of Logic Executive Search and Workplace Solutions. I have been in recruitment and human resources for over 10 years. Started out as a recruiter, progressed into branch manager, director of recruitment, and ultimately into regional manager for professional services of Ontario, and stepped away from the recruitment industry to take on a role as an HR manager with Erie Shores Healthcare, the hospital in Leamington. And shortly after I started my position, the pandemic hit. And there were so many organizations that were really struggling to find professional and executive level talent during that time. And I had always hoped, you know, at some point I'd have the courage to open up my own business, and thought, you know what, if I'm ever going to do it, now is going to be the time. So ended up leaving my role and launched my business back in September of last year. And really didn't anticipate within the first year that we'd have any staff joining me. But I'm so happy to share that this is the amazing group that I get a chance to work with day in and day out, who have joined my organization within the first 6 months of opening. Our organization, Logic Executive Search, as mentioned, we focus on professional and executive search. We've also expanded to include human resources support for our clients, as well as outplacement services. So if organizations are downsizing or right-sizing, we help with the transitioning employee. And we've expanded outside of just recruiting in Canada, but also in the US as well. So to start out with, what are some things that you need to keep in mind, or what are some signs potentially that you may need to hire your first employee? The first is really that you're turning down work. Maybe there's not enough time in the day, or you have projects on the go that you can't seem to get to. That may be a sign that you need to bring someone on board to help support with your business. If you're constantly turning away business, keep in mind that's a potential that those customers that are coming to you may start going to your competitors if you're consistently turning them away. Maybe you're unable to manage the workload. So I can appreciate, as an entrepreneur, you're not necessarily working 8 to 4, but you're putting in so many hours a day and you just can't seem to get to the work and manage your client expectations. And that will ultimately have an impact on your quality of work. So maybe you're making errors, or you're rushing to get things out quickly, or the opposite, that you're taking way too long to get back to your customers. And that's ultimately affecting the work that you're doing, or maybe errors that you're putting out. Perhaps there's an opportunity for you to gain a different skill set to your business outside of what you already have. And that skill set will help generate greater revenue. So to give you an example of that, one of the things that we found in our business was recruitment and human resources went very much hand in hand. And so many of our clients were looking for some support after they had onboarded their staff member. And so we brought on a specialist in human resources to help support that need. And ultimately, having someone specifically in that area was able to generate more revenue for us, and another stream of business for our organization. I can appreciate, as an entrepreneur, you wear so many different hats. I know when I started my business, it was accounting and finance, operations, business development, social media and marketing. You kind of do everything. And so it really bogged down the opportunity for me to grow my business. And so one of the things that I identified is I did a business analysis, and that's something that we'll talk about a little bit later today as well, is understanding what you need in your business to be able to help grow it strategically. And so myself, I found I was spending hours and hours a week really focusing on administration and not being able to have good conversations with my candidates and my clients. And so I identified that I really needed an administrator to help with getting things into the system, updating our postings, doing some data entry. And so that was my first hire. And what that allowed me to do was to actually spend more time having good conversations, going out to network, making business development calls. And that actually grew to a point where we brought in additional business, to the point where we needed to hire a recruitment specialist to be able to manage that business. So it allowed us to continue to grow strategically. It's really important to keep in mind every organization is different. So your organization is going to have a different need than potentially one of your competitors. And you want to make sure that you're financially in a position to bring on your first employee. Just a high level overview. So a question we get often is, can't I hire a consultant, or do I have to actually hire an employee? And there is very much a difference. So according to CRA, the payer is the employer and the worker is the employee. So you, as the employer, would have some responsibility to make sure deductions are being taken care of. So CPP, EI, income tax, and making those remittances. If you're working with a consultant, that individual would operate their own business or be engaged in a business relationship with you versus actually working for you. So where do you start? You know, the first question we talked about was understanding your business need. What is it that you actually need? Where is the gap, and how does this really fit into your business model? And then it's defining the role. What is the role exactly? What would it be responsible for? Is it part-time? Is it full-time? Do you require specific technical expertise? Really building that framework as to what the role entails. Then it's important to do your research in the market. What does the role pay in the market? Our market right now is very candidate driven. So what it looks like now versus a year and a half ago looks completely different. What other competitors are hiring for this role, and skill sets are they looking for? What type of remuneration are they providing? Trying to do your research to really understand how you can attract candidates to your organization. I think it's really important to be realistic. There is a talent shortage, and what you're looking for in the rate in which you're looking to pay may not exist. And so you need to be flexible or creative in terms of bringing on your first employee. And so maybe it means bringing on someone junior that you can grow and train and develop versus hiring someone with 10 to 15 years experience. Then comes recruitment and retention. So why is it important to build a recruitment strategy? And I'm interested to hear your feedback. Please drop any notes in the comment section here, how much you think it costs or what the cost of a bad hire would be. I'll give you a minute or so to drop some comments in there. $1,000. So on average, CareerBuilder estimates it can be upwards of $7,000 to $15,000. And that's the cost of advertising, your time spent training, recruiting, onboarding, salaries. All of this can add up very quickly, and all to have to do it again if you make a bad hiring decision. And you know, it's important to say it's important to request in a recruitment strategy. However, it's not foolproof. Really, what it does is help reduce the cost of a bad hire if and when it does happen, but doesn't necessarily mean it won't happen. Retention is a big piece. Research has shown that organizations who invest in a proper recruitment and onboarding strategy are 50% more likely to retain these individuals, and they're more likely to be more productive. Then comes the candidate experience. This is something I think organizations often forget about. What does that candidate experience mean? How did a candidate feel when they met with you? You know, if they had a bad experience, are they going to go back and tell their friends and family that they didn't have a good experience? Maybe they'll write a Google review. You want to make sure at every step in the process, you're being mindful of what that candidate experience looks like. And ultimately that those candidates could be potential customers of yours. And then it's important to invest in a fair and consistent hiring practice. So making sure that your candidates are sourced, they're screened, they're evaluated properly, and that they're given the same opportunities within the recruitment and selection process. So what does our market look like right now? COVID, which we've been in for quite some time now, has had such a huge impact in the job market. The types of positions, people leaving roles, how people are looking at work has really changed drastically. A term I'm sure many are familiar with, the Great Resignation. We've had so many individuals who have decided to leave the workforce, or who were in full-time positions that have decided to take part-time roles or change their career completely. Many roles that would have been in office have now transitioned to either hybrid or fully remote positions. So individuals in our market might actually be working for an organization in Toronto or BC. Increased costs, talent shortages, recruitment and retention strategies. Organizations are really looking at how can they be innovative in terms of how they're recruiting individuals to the organization, but also how do they keep good employees here? What type of things are they putting in place to make sure they're not losing any of their great talent? Work-life balance has become even more important. So many individuals have been impacted during the pandemic, whether they've had to take a step back from their careers or shift things, or when schools were in lockdown, you know, being home to homeschool their children. That has changed drastically. Flexible working hours. So outside of the clocking in at 8 and leaving at 4, really shifting to a mindset of looking at end results and outcome versus when people start and stop their working day. different incentives, minimum wage going up. So many things have really changed in our market. And it's really important, especially as a small business, to understand the market is changing and what can you do to make sure that you're changing alongside it. So now that we've got into recruitment, we've talked about developing your job profile, and how I really see this is like ordering an amazing meal at a restaurant and it gets to your plate and it's stunning and your mouth is watering and your eyes are so excited to eat. You know, you really want to look at it and have the same approach when you have your job profile. Is it exciting? Is it engaging? Does it tell your business story, who you are, what you do, and what your values are? You really want to look at it from the candidate's perspective. So what's in it for them? Why would they want to work there? What skills and experience will they bring to your organization? Recruitment also gives you an opportunity to build your value proposition. So I can appreciate, as a small business, you may not be able to compete with some of these bigger players on the screen here, but what are some of the value adds or things that would make you stand out? How exciting would it be for a candidate to join a new business who's just getting off the ground, who's a startup, to work alongside someone and see the growth that's happening? Maybe you offer remote work or flex time or some of those additional things that are really going to make you stand out as a small business. Recruitment also gives you a chance to build your brand awareness. So I'm sure if you saw the swoosh, you would know that that's Nike, or I'm loving it. Most people would know that that's McDonald's. It gives you a chance as you're doing your recruitment to use your colors, your logo, your tagline, so people start to associate it with you. Then comes sourcing. Now that you've developed your job profile, where do I get my job out there? And there's so many different types of sourcing strategies that you can use, and many of them are free, which is great, especially if you're just starting out your business. There's various different job boards, from Indeed, WEtech, HRDC, Canada Jobs. Social media is a great platform for you to be able to share your position and get it out to many people quickly. Facebook, for example, has a great profile within it where there's groups specifically for individuals in our market that are looking for work. So you can specifically target those individuals. Things like Windsor looking for work, Employment Help WindsorEssex, Essex County is hiring. There's different groups within Facebook specifically for those individuals looking for work. Our universities and colleges, to be able to partner with them, whether it's for internships or volunteer hours. Referrals, so word of mouth, people you know, friends or family that might be able to get the word out for you. We have so many amazing community partners in our community, whether it's City of Windsor, Workforce WindsorEssex, UHC. Many of them have different job boards or avenues to be able to share candidates or to get your jobs out there. Direct sourcing, or headhunting for lack of a better term. That's a little bit more time consuming, and oftentimes why organizations come to a recruitment firm like myself, but it really allows you to do some direct sourcing to individuals who are passively looking and have the skill set in which you're looking for. And then to reach out, there's multiple different job grants available for hiring your first employee. So now that you have identified that, now comes an opportunity for you, once you've received resumes in, to start screening your candidates. And I really encourage you to invest some time on the front end of your recruitment process, because it will ultimately help save some time on the back end. So spending 10-15 minutes on the phone with a candidate to pre-screen, to understand what their skills and experience is, does it align with the role, are they in range for the salary in which you're able to pay for the role. So having a consistent screening template that you can use to ultimately take notes as you're speaking with candidates. And you'll see me talk about this over and over again as we move forward. Take notes. It's so important. I don't know how many times you'll go back to say, I forget what that candidate said, or I forget the outcome of what happened there. And it's really important to have that information on hand. So making sure that you've got that standardized process where you're asking the same questions and taking notes. I don't know how many times I have heard from a candidate, I've gone to an interview, I must have called 1,000 times and I haven't heard anything, as my friend Adele here might say. It's so important as a business etiquette to get back to your candidates, whether they're the selected candidate or not. If you're not moving forward with a candidate, give them the courtesy to let them know that you're not moving forward. I think we've all been in that place at some point in time where we've been applying for a job and we just haven't heard anything, and it's nerve-wracking and disappointing at times. So please just make sure if you are connecting with candidates that you're giving them the courtesy to let them know if you're moving forward or not. Then comes the interview process, very similar to the pre-screen in the sense that you want to make sure that you have a standard interview template and that you're asking questions that are appropriate and specific to the role at hand. Many organizations have shifted to behavioral-based interviewing. So really looking at how they have handled past situations to determine how they would handle things in the future. So to give you an example, tell me about a specific time in which you had a project that didn't go according to plan. How did you handle it and what was the end result? So those really focus on how they've dealt with those situations versus how they say they would actually deal with them. It really helps you understand what they've done in the past. Assessments are a great piece in the interview process. So if you're hiring an administrator, perhaps you can do Word, Excel, or typing testing. If you're hiring someone in marketing, that you can make sure that they actually have the skills in the programs in which you're utilizing. Job shadowing, depending on the level of confidentiality. If you can have them actually come in, see what the role entails, it really helps paint a better picture of what the day-to-day is versus what they anticipate that it's going to look like. And then again, take notes. Again, you'll find yourself going back to those notes later on, whether it's through the process or months from now. If you have another opportunity and you had 2 great candidates, you could go back to see who you had met with previously. And then again, making sure that you're discussing next steps. When it comes to references, making sure that you're doing references with the proper contacts. So outside of a friend or a family member, make sure that you're reaching out to a manager or supervisor, someone that they would have reported into. So now that you have found the candidate that you want to move forward with, it's important to have a signed offer of employment in place. That should include everything from start date, rate of pay, who they report to, location, hours of work, all of that should be listed in the signed offer of employment. And then you may also have some internal policies or forms that you need them to complete, whether it's tax forms or confidentiality agreement. And then again, starting an employee file to get off on the right foot. So in a nutshell, when it comes to recruitment, you want to be very thorough in the process, but you need to move quickly, especially in today's market. To take 2, 3, 4 weeks to get back to a candidate, chances are that candidate won't be available by the time you go back to them. Now that you've got everything set up and you know who you're moving forward with, just some housekeeping items you want to make sure that you've taken care of. So making sure that you've registered with CRA to get them onto payroll, depending on the type of organization that you are, WSIB, and making sure that you're familiar with employment standards. So understanding rest periods, leave of absence, record keeping, hours of work, all of those things should be top of mind for you as well. So now that you have the individual who's joined your organization, how do you keep them here and how do you keep them engaged, especially as a small business starting out? I'm sure this is a diagram that many of you have seen, that employees really stay when they're paid well, they're mentored, they're challenged, they're empowered. And so how do you do that as a business when you're starting out? And so I think the important piece comes when you're onboarding. So it's really important to place a plan in place from day one. So welcoming that individual to your organization, and it could be little things as small as, you know, a pen to the organization or a handwritten card to show them how happy you are that they've joined. Making sure that you're taking the time to onboard them properly. So if on their first day you have to be out of the office for a doctor's appointment for a few hours and you have too many meetings, probably not the right time to onboard someone. Take the time to onboard them on a day that you know that you're going to be available to answer questions, be there to train them properly, and invest the time to get them off on the right foot. Ensure the employee has the proper tools and resources. So whether it's their computer and email setup, a phone, making sure that those things are done in advance so you're not scrambling on their first day trying to deal with all of these technical issues. And then checking in, make sure that you create a safe space where the employee can check in to let you know how things are going, if they have any questions. And then setting expectations. And this is really important up front. So setting the time to work with the employee to set what are the expectations, what are the goals, and how do we get there? It's important to have those conversations frequently. So it's not something that you should be discussing just at 30, 60, 90 days. Those should be ongoing conversations that you have to really look at reviewing what the goals are, evaluating them. Maybe you need to shift focus and the goals that you had previously don't align right now and you need to move into a different direction. Having that communication allows you to do that. And then monitoring results and documenting. It's really important to document and monitor the results, because if you find that you're working with an employee and they're not meeting expectations, you have some difficult decisions to make, whether it's you put a performance plan in place to try to get them to where you need to be, or if they're not the right individual, where do you go from there? There'll be some training that you'll need to look at putting in place as well. Accessibility for Ontarians with disabilities, which will really look at confidently interacting with those with disabilities. WMIS, depending on your organization, which provides information on how to safely use, handle, and store hazardous materials. Worker or supervisor health and safety awareness, which really looks at basic occupational health and safety, and then workplace violence and harassment. But I think the important thing to note is it doesn't stop there. So now that you've brought on an individual to your organization and you've invested the first 3 to 6 months getting them up to speed, it's important to continue to do so, whether it's 6 months, yearly reviews from there. It's important to communicate that often. You would never want an employee to get to a year-end review and think that they've done a phenomenal job, and you, on the other hand, have had so many concerns that you've saved up that you haven't discussed with them. Deal with concerns as they arise, put a plan in place, and really invest in the long term. If you have an individual that you feel is the right fit for your organization, have those conversations. What are they looking for and where do they want to be in your business, and build a plan. Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope that you're able to take away some of these tidbits from today and put it into place from your business as you're starting to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you to our attendees as well. Great engagement in the chat. At this time, I just ask everyone to type your questions in the chat box so we can ask Jennifer and have her provide her expertise to us. We'll just give it a quick minute. I know Zoom takes a couple seconds to reload everything. While we wait for questions, just on a founder level, Jennifer, what has been, one of your big aha moments in your founder's journey so far?
So many. One specifically, and I think something I recognized early on, is I couldn't do everything. And I think as a small business owner, especially starting out, I felt the need that I needed to be everything. Like I mentioned, finance and accounting, operations, business development, and, recruitment is my expertise, and, social media and marketing isn't. And so I recognized that I needed to partner with other individuals who were experts in those areas. And that also gave me the time to focus on growing my business. And I'm so lucky that our community has some amazing, talented individuals. And so I've entrusted in them to help support with my business. And it's been amazing. It's been a great learning experience for me, but recognizing that you don't have to be everything, and to have good support and resources that you can connect with.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you are one of the rare examples of how you've leveraged the WindsorEssex ecosystem with the Venture Women program and the EPICentre.
The EPICentre has been amazing to me. The Venture Women program helped really get my business off the ground as well. And so giving me the opportunity to meet with different advisors and network and practice my leadership skills. And then now it's really exciting because I've joined the Venture Women program as an advisor this year. So now I'm on the other end, and I get to see all these amazing startup businesses, and it's just been a wonderful experience. They've been a huge support.
Wow, so you're really coming full circle into the fold here. I'm just going to read the first question we have here. Any advice for when you have to unhire an employee?
That's where I think that documentation piece and communication piece is so crucial. As mentioned, if you have those check-in points along the way, an employee should never get to the point where it's a surprise for them. If you are consistently meeting with them, if you've set goals and targets in terms of what you're looking for, you're communicating them regularly, and you're not seeing an improvement, it shouldn't be a surprise to an employee if you get to the point where you're having that. And it's really important to set those expectations in the conversations to say, here's where we need to get to be. What are some of the tools or resources that you need from me to get there, and monitoring that and holding each other accountable. But again, if you're having those conversations, it shouldn't be to the point where an employee should be surprised if things aren't working out, if you've communicated that as they happen.
Absolutely. And how long would you wait before letting a potential employee that isn't working out? How long would you wait before letting them go?
I don't think there's a specific time frame that you have to use. I mean, most organizations have a probationary period. So maybe you have a 3 or 6 month probationary period. And again, if you set those expectations up front, it gives you that time frame to work through to see if the employee is meeting expectations. But it really depends on the role. Like I've hired for positions that really take a full year for an individual to get up to speed. And so expecting that someone is going to deliver results within a couple of weeks just isn't going to be realistic. So it really depends. You really have to understand how much time it will really take to get someone up to speed.
Absolutely. I'll just move on to our next question here. If an employee is a seasonal worker and not performing as expected, are there specific procedures?
If you're hiring, it depends on what's written out in your offer letter. So if you've hired them for a specific period of time, and if you've given some sort of notice period in your offer letters, that's something that, again, you'll have to look into a little bit further to see how you'd like to document that. But if you've hired them for a season and there's a probationary period and they're not working out, then it gives you that opportunity to cut ties at that point. But again, it's all based on how you've written that into your offer letters.
Is there any specific tips or tricks you have for writing offer letters?
Make sure that you're detailed in the information. There's great resources that you can reach out to make sure. There's great templates online that you can use as a standard. I know if you have to reach out through the Small Business Center, like there's so many different resources that you can reach out to help vet some of those letters. And so many opportunities that you can look online to see what kind of standard templates are out there. So just utilizing some of those, I think, are important.
Absolutely. And can you talk a bit about the benefits or differences between full-time and part-time employees?
So full-time employees would have a specific amount of hours that they're working with your organization. Most part-time employees don't necessarily have those same type of benefits, or maybe they have pay in lieu of benefits. So there's different types of things allocated to hiring on a full-time employee and what those procedures are that you need to follow versus hiring somebody that's part-time. Usually the benefits look quite different.
Absolutely. And do you, for our attendees here, a lot of them are early stage businesses and companies, as we know through our registration process. Do you prefer them to hire full-time, part-time? What is your recommendation for our small businesses?
It depends on what the business need is. Like I know for myself, for example, I didn't need a full-time administrator, right? We needed someone part-time. So they're working about 10 hours a week to allow them the time to do data entry and enter things into our system and manage our website and those kinds of things. So it didn't call for me actually needing someone on a full-time basis. So it really depends on what your need is. Maybe you just need a little bit of administrative support to focus your time elsewhere. So it really depends on each individual business. I don't know that I could say that that's a standard response for hiring someone full-time or part-time. I mean, the goal would be ultimately ideal if we could give everybody full-time work, but the need might not necessarily arise for that.
Absolutely. Our next question here we have is, would you recommend using students before bringing on an employee?
Students are are wonderful. And to give you an example, we actually have a student, an MBA student from the Odette School of Business, who's joined our organization to complete their MBA placement from September until end of November. And it's been fabulous for our business. And it's been an amazing learning experience for that individual to get into the workforce and learn more about your industry. And, ultimately the goal would be, if you can hire that individual after their placement's done, how wonderful is that? They've already spent time with your organization. It's a bit of an assessment to see if they're the right fit for the organization and the role that you have. They already learned during that period of time. So it's great if you're able to partner with the college or the university to get a student. I think it's a great experience for them and also for the organization.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I was that MBA student last year for a different organization, so I can certainly speak from experience how helpful it has been in getting me to my role at WEtech Alliance. So Odette has been an excellent resource for a lot of business owners locally.
And it's been, for us, it's been wonderful in the sense that we had somebody coming from a different lens, somebody who had a bit of an HR background, but was newer to recruitment, and really took a fresh perspective on how we were doing certain things. And I'm hopeful it was a great MBA placement, because we've been really able to put some of those things that individual had suggested to us into place, right? And as a student, to be able to feel that you're part of an organization where you've been able to make an impact and you see some of the things that you put into place, what an amazing experience. And again, the goal would be, if you can hire that individual after they've continued their placement. I don't know how many individuals, in a past life I've been able to see who started out in an internship or started out in a temporary position who ended up getting full-time permanent work. It's a great story to tell.
Absolutely. And if any of our attendees are looking to connect with getting an MBA placement, please reach out to Marty Beneteau. And our toolkit will include his information. All right, we have another question here. With the pandemic causing so much more remote work, how do you handle hiring and company culture in a virtual environment?
I think that's a great question. More and more individuals want to know, who am I going to be working with, and what does the company stand for? What are the values? And so I think if you can start to incorporate some of those things right away in your job profile, right away in your advertising for your job positions, that attracts candidates from day one. And I think there's a big piece of helping a candidate understand who you are and your values and the things that your organization believes in and how they can be a part of that. So again, tailoring it back to that candidate experience, when it's what's in it for them and what does that look like for them. Starting that out at the recruitment process, because there's one thing to say that you've got a great work culture and that you're doing the right things on paper, but are you actually living those values? And are you actually doing the things that you're committed to doing to create a good work environment? So starting it there, but actually living those values.
Absolutely. And personally, I was hired virtually. So I worked with my team for about 2 months before we all met up and saw what each other looked like in person.
And our team is working fully remote. So we communicate daily, but we have staff meetings together. We've done virtual sessions together that we do. So it's so important, especially in a virtual world. There's something to be said about sitting in front of someone across the desk. And so being able to still engage with people virtually has been challenging, but our business is trying to do the best that we can as well. And engaging our staff, really having our staff be involved with how we lead some of that engagement as well.
Absolutely. And is there anything unique or special you've done to engage your staff in a virtual environment?
I mean, we've done paint sessions together through the Rotary Club of Windsor 1918. We've done paint night for polio together as a team. We've had a health day. Each of our staff got a salt lamp to help with their office, and all these different things that we can try to incorporate. We have brainstorming sessions when we meet every Thursday. So important, whatever we can do to try to engage the staff. And oftentimes they're leading the conversation. And the reason for that is, I'm blessed that I get a chance to work with these amazing individuals, and they have such great ideas. And they're so excited about what we're doing as a small business. So I try to let them lead the conversation of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it gives them an opportunity to be a part of the growth, which is so exciting.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just move on to our next question so that we have enough time to answer all of them. Are there a different set of protocols for hiring interns?
So that's a question I may not have 100% of the answer to, but I know we had an intern, obviously, from the University of Windsor, the Odette School of Business, and there are specific processes that they have in place that we as the employer needed to abide by. So it was, rather than us having those processes, it was really just making sure that we as a business were able to accommodate the needs of what that program had.
Absolutely. Our next question here is, how do you consider diversity hiring during the Great Resignation when hiring is difficult?
Hiring is very difficult right now. And so it's so important to hire based on the right skill set, and diversifying where and how you're looking for individuals. Posting a job and waiting for resumes to come in, that doesn't happen anymore. It's going out to different organizations, it's going out to different community partners, it's how you're attracting candidates, it's how you're writing your job descriptions. I mean, there's platforms now that can scour through different job postings to see if they're tailored towards a specific gender or not. There's so many things that you can incorporate in terms of how you're recruiting. The nice part about being a recruiter that I find is, when an individual sends through a resume to a client, oftentimes it's one of hundreds of resumes that client might get in. As a recruiter, I can actually, we do this, we pick up the phone and we have a conversation with the hiring manager. So when I reach out to a client, it's, here's why I've submitted Jennifer, and here's more about her personality, and here's how she'll bring value to the organization, and here's more about her background and her world travels, and here's what she's accomplished. All of those things that somebody won't necessarily see by just reading a resume. And so you really have an advocate, is best way that I can term it. So we try to have those conversations with our clients, because oftentimes I think sometimes resumes get overlooked. And so if you can have somebody who's really sharing about someone's diverse background and what they've done and how they can bring value, and that it may be different from what they currently have and why that's a good thing. Those are some of the amazing things that we get to do as recruitment specialists.
That's amazing. And just a final couple questions here. What are your top 3 lessons in hiring and recruiting that you could share with our attendees here?
Top 3. One would be maybe hire before you need it. And I know that sounds silly, but oftentimes I think in hiring, we end up hiring someone when it's too late, when we're so busy or we're exhausted or we're swamped. Planning in advance is going to be very important to being able to hiring the right person in place, and doing it in advance of when you need it and planning it out. So that way you can make sure that you're growing properly. Another piece would be having a good process in place. Don't try to wing it. This is not something that you should try to just do on the fly. Recruitment takes time, and it takes effort and planning and making sure that you're doing it properly. And the documenting piece, which I keep talking about as well. And then another piece, the question was another piece of advice for hiring your employee. Sorry, can you repeat it one more time?
Top three lessons in hiring and recruiting.
Another piece is, I think, a top lesson, and we actually just recently wrote a blog about this as well, is there's more to a resume. And, oftentimes people are not necessarily trained in how to write a resume. And there have been times where I've reviewed a resume and picked up the phone and thought, oh my goodness, I've learned so much more about this individual on a phone call than I did in just reading through the resume, or vice versa. You have a great resume, but the individual just unfortunately isn't the right fit. If you see gaps in employment, if you see somebody has left a position abruptly, potentially, if they've only been there for a few months, don't discard the resume. Pick up the phone, have a conversation. There are so many individuals, especially over the last year, whose jobs were impacted by COVID and they were laid off. or individuals who had to care for a loved one, or maybe they decided to travel the world for a year and get real life experience. Don't take some of those things at face value. Pick up the phone and have a conversation, and you'll be astounded by the amazing individuals that you'll get a chance to meet with.
Those are some great lessons, and I know we have John Mark jotting them down so that we can share them in our toolkit. And one final question. So one of the highlights of this week is we're asking entrepreneurs to celebrate failure. Tell us where it is that you might have failed as an entrepreneur, as a boss or a CEO, or failed at hiring someone. So what has been that one fail, and how is it that you picked yourself back up out of it?
I fail a lot. And I don't think that's a bad thing to say. And I think sometimes we think failure is a weakness when it's not. I've had moments when I first started my business of getting so overwhelmed and making some of those, like we talked about, making some of those little customer service errors or things that you wish you would have done a little bit differently, or overthinking it, and it just didn't work out the way that you would have expected. And for me, I keep a little board for myself of reminders where it's learn from it and move on. We all make mistakes. If it's not hurting anyone's life and it's not something that's going to have such a major impact on the business, it's okay. Learn from it, move on, grow. I've had so many errors. To narrow it down to one, I don't think I can. I think we fail and we learn every day. There are so many things that I wish I would have done differently. I wish I would have done faster. I wish I could have said differently. And that's okay. So, it's a work in progress. I can't say I've mastered that by any means. It's something that I'm trying to continue to do every day, because it's not a bad thing. And I think for me, recognizing that, because initially, I think sometimes we tie failure to weakness, and it's very much two different things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate all your insight that you shared with us today. And I just want to ask the attendees if there are any final questions, to post them in the chat box before we wrap up here today. And I know John Mark also shared the link to share your fail for this week to be entered for a chance to win a great local prize. Okay, I think those are all the questions that we have for you today. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us and sharing your workshop and sharing your journey with us. On behalf of Founders Week YQG team, we cannot wait to celebrate your continued growth and success and see what's next for your team and your company. And before we log off here today, we have a quick survey for all the attendees. Please make sure that you give us some session feedback. It's just a quick survey, and you will be entered for a $50 Windsor gift card session giveaway. And the more entries that you make into our survey, the more chances you have of winning. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. And please don't forget to check out, up next, we have Machine Learning Meets Bio Art, hosted by the Art Incubator Lab. It's one of the unique sessions we are offering this week. And then finally, do not forget to tune into Failure Night at 6 p.m. tonight. We have an exciting lineup of speakers that you cannot wait to hear, including Richard Petty, hosted live from the River Books. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We will see you at 3.